Robin Hood Radio presents Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens. Michele is a longtime journalist and herself is a published playwright of several theatrical works. She's a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and the Atlantic websites.
Another opening of another show.
Well, I don't know what you did on Saturday, but here was my day. First, I listened to a lecture by a Shakespearean scholar from Stratford-on-Avon, mind you, about what she called the weird ways people performed the bard's tragedies. How were the stages set? Black curtains. What did the actors' footwear tell us? Not to mention how they walked, or as Professor Tiffany Storm said, how they strutted. This is really rather fun, which you can find on shakespearecenter.org/bard talks. Next Saturday, another This Way comes from there. This subject is called The Difficulty of Forgiveness Ethics in King Lear. The Difficulty of Forgiveness Ethics in King Lear, I guess is the way you pronounce it. Anyway, after that, I spent the next hour zooming in on a reading of Shakespeare's sonnets, read live by the Creative Women New York troupe. Oh my, the things that man composed in 1609 about beauty and what he calls feeble age. Passages like, "Thou art thy mother's glass," and some that seem to capture this moment in time. "Making a famine where abundance lies, and all losses are restored and sorrows end." Well, the final part of my Saturday was being on a panel of sorts for the Waterwell Theater Company's annual Fleet Week event, during which they usually combine entertainers and those in the military around the city. This year, of course, it was all virtual. Waterwell is an interesting company, always concerned with more than merely performing. Anyway, meanwhile, this is my week 10 of what used to be called Stage Right or Not, and is temporarily called No Stage Left. So I was thinking it's not too soon to start talking awards. No, not Tonys. Maybe we can call these the pandemies. I'm afraid if I wait much longer, I will forget all the great stuff that has been performed virtually for those missing live theater. So this week, here are my nominees for Best Actor during a Plague. First up, J.O. Sanders, who stars as Mr. Apple in the Public Theater's original We Need to Talk About This. And then this past weekend, he also took part in a delightful reading of George Bernard Shaw's Candida. My next nominee is last year's Tony winner, Santino Fontana, who was also in Candida and another reading of a Shaw play recently, Arms and the Man. He has been nothing less than fantastic. The third slot goes to Oscar Isaac, hilarious as the tyrannical, narcissistic, and eerily resonant Oedipus in the Oedipus Project, as well as the wounded, AIDS-inflicted star of Beirut, a harrowing little tale in which he starred alongside Marissa Tomei. The fourth slot in this already impressive category has to go to Bryan Cranston. Can this man do no wrong? Who performed alongside Sally Field in A.R. Gurney's Love Letters. I pray it's still available on YouTube. More on that in a moment. Final slot so far, well, the omnipresent Michael Urie for playing the frantically blocked young Shakespeare in an original one-act called Frankie and Will. Next week, my nominees for Best Actress. Suffice to say, all these performers deserve medals of honor for volunteering their time and talent despite the technical challenges and lack of preparation. Which brings me to the biggest winner so far and why so many of those folks are stepping up. That's the Actors Fund. This human services organization was founded in 1882. It offers performers in all media financial support when necessary, counseling advice on affordable housing, insurance, and health care, something obviously critical at this moment. The Actors Fund puts on these weekly offerings, many of them, and they're generally free, but they also are spurring much-needed donations. Now, the most memorable live and now recorded material that I watched this past week included the aforementioned Candida and Love Letters and a one-act called The Sentinels. Now, Candida's impeccable cast, besides Fontina and J.O. Sanders, also included Renee Elise Goldsberry as the title character. Now, she was one of the stars of the original Hamilton, and she was absolutely dazzling in this. George Bernard Shaw certainly had a way with words. Did he in fact invent the phrase gift of gab, which is uttered here? A man ought to be able to be fond of his wife without losing his mind over her. I have been making a fool of myself in private while you have been making a fool of yourself in public. In 100 years we shall be the same age. Well, those are just a few literary gems I recall from this one. I'm not sure exactly what the moral of the story about men and women and the marriages they make is, but all I know is I laughed all the way through. And then there was Love Letters, a two-hander that I've always admired. Here, a man and a woman, well, a boy and a girl, start corresponding as young schoolmates, then from their respective boarding schools and onward through their complicated lives. Why do they keep telling us to stay away from girls and then make sure we know how to dance with them, says young Andrew from his all-boys school. Guess what, writes the teenage Melissa, I'm going to a psychiatrist now. Well, that line makes more sense as her story continues. Gurney's play is filled with others. I don't think you can be smart and Catholic at the same time. Once again, you'll end up with all boys, says Melissa when Andrew goes into politics. Who knew we'd turn into two uptight old wasps going at it, she says. I first saw Love Letters decades ago with Jenna Rowlands and Ben Gazzara. I know I've seen it since then, but I don't think I'll ever see it played as well as Sally Field and Bryan Cranston did this past weekend. From different places, mind you, and likely with no rehearsal. But every ounce of humor and pathos and even chemistry came through. My final favorite virtual experience of the week was The Sentinels, part of the Live Lab series from MCC. Now, this half-hour piece is written by Matthew Lopez, a young man behind The Inheritance. It follows, well, in reverse order, 3 women who lost the men they loved on 9/11, now once-a-year widows, as they describe themselves. The story is spare but stirring, and what a cast. Jane Alexander, Priscilla Lopez, Katrina Link, and Danae Benton. Nice and resonant sentiments here as well. As soon as we forget, it could happen again. This is not just my pain, it's the nation's pain. Well, I would tell you to try to seek those readings out on YouTube, and I will tell you that, but I have learned that some stay on and others can only stay up a few days, so try to find them if you can, but best to watch when you know they are coming. Which is why I continue to alert you to what to look for next. For me, Wednesday at 3, I'm going to watch a reading of a 1990 Carol Churchill play called Mad Forest. That's on the Theater for a New Audience site. Thursday at 6 p.m., I'm going to tune into the Classic Stage Company's Conversation series to hear actor Stephen Pasquale chat about his career. I've been a fan forever, as have many. On Friday, Broadway.com will show Allegiance, a musical about this country's shameful Japanese internment episode. I remember enjoying the show and discussing it here, actually. It was not a success and probably not really Broadway material, but I bet it will be satisfying to experience virtually. Tonight, another Broadway musical that did not do well, called Bandstand, is also airing on Broadway on demand. It's a World War II swing-style show and probably will feel good about now. National Theatre Live is showing productions from their vault all the time, and this week it is highlighting Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire, starring Gillian Anderson. The National Theatre Live showings are always a treat, making you feel like you were right there in those seats at that theater, if not on that stage. And if you dream of getting your own show on stage, by the way, check out Best Off-Broadway's 30-day playwriting challenge. You pay a pittance and get some professional help along the way. Once again, my best overall tip is to go to every theater company's site to see what is being offered. Not to mention places like the 92nd Street Y, Broadway.com, Theater Mania, and so on. As for anything that qualifies as theater news, well, no one takes the hoped-for Labor Day opening for Broadway shows lightly. What else? I opened this report talking about Shakespeare. Well, in London, there is panic that the Globe Theatre, which famously performs his works, will have to permanently close. Back here, it was announced that a musical based on Billy Wilder's classic film Some Like It Hot will aim to open on Broadway in the fall of 2021. That's one of my favorite films, I must say. But adapting, it seems like a challenge. Men dressing as women to hide from mobsters and get into a traveling band. Well, Tootsie didn't do so well this past season with some similar themes. But who knows? Which, Jill, are sort of the two words that sum up everything these days. Who knows?
Or what will be really interesting, just as you alluded to in your, we'll call it your bartery, where you said, it's amazing how Shakespeare was dealing with themes that, right, well, we had the historically the Great Fire of London, the plague. I mean, there's lots of stuff that he had to write about, and you know the one about repeating history. If you don't learn from history, you're sort of the old doomed to repeat it. But what I am curious about is how that will inform entertainment coming out of it, because going into it, you and I talked a lot about how basically political, dystopian, and grim, or you were fine, and I talked about how political, dystopian, and grim. It's just like, where was the entertainment value if you weren't of a certain mindset, except in musicals? So I just wonder what's going to happen comedy-wise, and that takes me to Some Like It Hot, which I like to look at when these things came out in the cycle.
Of course. What did best during World War II? Shirley Temple movies. People want escapism in the middle of these things. Unfortunately, you can't do these things in a pandemic like this. You can't do that on stage. You can't do it even in film now, but you can do it virtually. We can. And what are people watching? Well, they're probably watching comedies. My guess is they're probably not watching a lot of. Well, I don't know. They said that for a while there they were watching some of these movies about infections, but
they were, except that then once everybody got themselves totally terrified, and started dividing into their tribes, that stopped. It totally depends on the person, and there I will just go so far as to say I'm noticing that there are some ancillary mental health issues that are an unintended consequence of, history is, hindsight is one of those things. But
and I think once this passes, I mean, right now people are writing these things quickly. Look, I wrote one myself. How to get through, whatever, to help people get through it, or even doing these sonnets that might refer back to a time and all this stuff. Right now, I get it. This one that Matthew Lopez, The Sentinels, that clearly was written now, about about 9/11. But that's not. I don't think that's what we're going to be seeing when Broadway reopens. We're not going to see 10 shows about the pandemic. No, I think we're going to see the Some Like It Hots and the Plaza Suites, and
Right, and I think also, as you know only too well, and it's something that we do touch upon fairly frequently, it takes more than about half an hour to get your show up there. So if you are planning in a year and a half to have a show like that, you'd best get on it now.
Oh, yeah. No, the serious issues now are, yes, of course, these plays, will they get will they be able to hold on long enough to be performed next season? Will everybody stay around? But the bigger crisis are the little companies, the nonprofits all over the country, whether they're Jewish theaters, whether they're whatever they are, nonprofits. The public will probably doesn't have to worry. But they're all over the country, little theaters.
But for the first time, I'm going to interrupt only to say, for the first time, as far as I can tell in recorded history, the SBA is offering loans to nonprofits. At a very favorable rate. So, when people, which is something we have never had access to. Considering that as a radio station, we only lost about 90% of our underwriting when people were forced to close, that's helpful. But again, that nonprofit component is wake up, that's apply. You can afford it.
Yes, it's definitely been a lifesaver for a lot of these companies. They've told me, oh my God, they just qualified for, so that can get them through the next, however long. But they also depend on supporters. The Actors Fund, they're raising millions of dollars, just quietly putting stuff up, making a pitch. They always, in the middle of their plays, they make a strong pitch, and everybody starts sending in money.
And I think people still have money. That is the interesting thing. People still have money, and and they can decide to. What I'm most interested in is the political aspect of it, because so much money was being hoovered up into that, and I don't know if the same amount is, but certainly it shows that once again, people are very generous, and they can therefore be generous to these little companies, etc. as well.
Absolutely. Anything that says the money. I joined a Vermeer art class. What do I care about? I mean, what do I know? But I was interested enough. So I had a 4-week class on learning about Vermeer and his paintings. Why did I sign up? Because the money was all going to healthcare workers, anything that says, all your money will go to health, we do it, because we want it. People do want to help. And, there's only so much we can do. But we want to support people like you and people like these entertainers and these companies that, what do? They try to give us...
Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens, produced in the studios of Robin Hood Radio, robinhoodradio.com.